Well, last night at 1 in the morning, the police evicted Zuccotti Park.
The police department in New York City and the folk over in Zuccotti Park, I think, have had a really good, at least as far as I can tell so far, a really good working relation, right? They really seem to have arrived at a kind of understanding of one another and accommodation of one another.
Unjustified police brutality, and that's what I saw last night. My friend got pepper sprayed in the mouth because she was standing on the sidewalk that they were blocking off, and she was tweeting about what was happening. Just got pepper sprayed in the mouth. That is fucked up. That's fucked up. The tent.
Where it is, there were 5,000 books that were taken and just disposed of. It's just. I don't know what to tell you.
He bought it.
Yeah.
He's in a third term, which is illegal in the first place.
But you still have election rights, so you.
Right? Yes. Okay, so the movement, the Occupy Wall Street movement, from your point of view, does it imperil public safety or the community, the surrounding community?
Does it imperil public safety? Is that the question?
Yes. Is there a clear and present danger?
Well, this is a complicated question. We don't feel there's a clear and present danger. What we're trying to do as a community board is, as issues arise, we're going to proactively address them. If there are issues, for example, about the late night drumming, we address that. The issues about the barricades, we will address that. The issues regarding sanitation, which we heard a tremendous amount about, we urge the city to put in bathrooms for the 9/11 memorial.
On November 14th, 2011, Urban Sound Station Television was invited to the New York Press Club panel discussion on the Occupy Wall Street movement. The discussion took place at the City University of New York Graduate School of Journalism. The discussion panel was in part made up of a representative from the Wall Street Journal, a representative from the Occupied Wall Street movement, and a member from the community board who represented residents and businesses in the Wall Street area. Among the issues discussed by the New York Press Club panel discussion range from coverage of the Occupy Wall Street movement by the mainstream media to the discomfort created by the occupiers for residents and businesses in the Wall Street area. While Urban Sound Station was asking the community board member if the Occupy Wall Street movement represented a clear and present danger to the residents and businesses in the area. Plans were already underway by Mayor Michael Bloomberg and Police Commissioner Raymond Kelly to forcibly remove the occupiers from Zuccotti Park in the Wall Street area in New York City. On its way back from the New York Press Club panel discussion, Urban Sound Station Television witnessed an unusual amount of police presence around the Wall Street area. There was a kind of eerie feeling about the whole thing. Soon after midnight, on November 15, 2011, while most of the occupiers were asleep in their tents in Zuccotti Park, and where the mainstream media was nowhere in sight, police moved into Zuccotti Park in full force and in substantial numbers, and with a great deal of aggressiveness, dismantled the occupiers' tents and other makeshift facilities such as the kitchen, library, and medical clinic, and proceeded to forcibly remove the occupiers from inside Zuccotti Park and arrested substantial numbers of occupiers. Late that day, the matter found its way into court, and after much legal wrangling about free speech and freedom of expression, the court ruled that
It's all about dehumanizing us so people don't feel as bad when we do get kicked out. And the thing is, we're winning. We have so much support. If he's going to kick us out, he's going to have to kick half of New York out.
What are you holding up? So this is the court order from earlier today. The New York State Supreme Court ordered that the police needed to let us back into Zuccotti Park. We were allowed to bring tents and sleeping bags. Now, what happened was, this was a temporary injunction against the police. It was a restraining order from the state Supreme Court. What happened was, we were supposed to be allowed back into there until 11:30. They were having another court hearing right now to discuss the permanent effects of that. Now, the police right now, because they did not let us back in, are in contempt of court for not letting us into the park.
Thank you.
What would you like to see?
And there was just a lot of dispute over who was going to do what.
So Robert, who's right here?
In what?
Well, in terms of the legalities of camping out in a city park and having the freedom to do, in essence, what you want, and when do you infringe upon the rights of others? We'll talk about the businesses in the area in particular.
Right. Well, so you know, this is one of these classic areas, basically under the First Amendment, right, that we all have a right to assemble and to engage in political speech, and that basically government instrumentalities are quite limited as to how much regulating they can do when it comes to the exercise of First Amendment rights. On the other hand, of course, the sort of phrase of art that tends to be used in the jurisprudence here is that reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on political activity and political speech are permissible under the First Amendment. And of course, the devil's always in the details, right? What does constitute a reasonable time, place, or manner restriction? That's not something that's very easy to come up with good general answers to, right? Usually you have to decide those kinds of things on a case-by-case basis, and that's why litigation in this area is always so difficult. That in turn, I think, is one reason why the arrangements that are often sort of converged upon in cases like this are often sort of pragmatic, give and take sorts of accommodations that are made between the speakers on the one hand and various authorities on the other. And you know, I have to say that there's the police department in New York City and the folk over in Zuccotti Park, I think, have had a really good, at least as far as I can tell so far, a really good working relation, right? They really seem to have arrived at a kind of understanding of one another and accommodation of one another, and maybe one reason that you don't see the kinds of disputes in New York City that you see, say, over in Oakland, is because the police and the folk in Zuccotti have made a real effort, it seems to me, to sort of arrive at an accommodation and mutual understanding. And so, you know, one of the things that goes to me when I'm over there, of course, is that, you know, you'll often hear in the GA itself, right, people will be saying, look, should we limit the time during which the drum circle meets, right, so that we can kind of retain friendly relations with the neighbors. And everybody seems to agree with that, right? Everybody seems to say, yeah, that's a good idea. And so the neighbors themselves, in my impression at least, is the neighbors of the park itself are actually quite appreciative of this fact. They're kind of moved by this. By the same token, I see members of the movement over in Zuccotti making a real effort to be friendly with and thankful to and expressing their thanks to the police, right, for keeping them safe and for taking good care of them. So if you know, I think this sort of this is a particularly interesting contrast, right, between Occupy Wall Street on the one hand and some of the movements in the 1960s on the other, right? At least if the history books are to be believed, it sounds as though there was a good bit of, or it looks as though there was a good bit of acrimony back in the 1960s between authorities, police, and so forth on the one hand, and say anti-Vietnam protesters on the other. One thing that's really quite different this time around, you know, again, if the 60s were as the history books seem to say that they were, is that you actually do have a real sort of pragmatic mutual understanding that's developed, and mutual respect that seems to have developed between the so-called occupiers on the one hand, and the police and the neighbors on the other. Another neighbor, by the way, or another kind of neighbor that's had really good relations with the folk at Zuccotti Park have been a lot of the local merchants and restaurants and so forth, right? So there's, of all things, you know, a McDonald's restaurant, right, that has been offering its restrooms to people who are in Zuccotti Park. Other sort of local restaurants have actually donated food to the kitchen folk over at Zuccotti. And again, this is not maybe what one would have expected if this were just some sort of crazy radical movement that was sort of against everything, as some people in the press, maybe I shouldn't say the press, but as some people
always our fault
with political agendas have characterized them. Right?
Well, yeah, there's the wonderful thing about the police and these local businesses is that they get that it's not an us versus them thing. It's that we're all in this together and we're trying to affect change that affects all of us. And one thing I wanted to say about the legal aspect of this, I believe that there is because of its unique position as a park in the city and its proximity to the original trade center, there is some sort of an agreement between the city and the landowner that was signed when the park was created, that it must allow 24-hour access and egress to people, 24 hours. So that's where this is very different from most of the other parks in the city.
So why do you think that the occupiers in Portland and in Oakland were evicted over the weekend? I mean, what's the differences there and here?
Well, the differences is, again, it's selective enforcement in some cases and over-enforcement of park curfews at gunpoint, and park curfews with tear gas canisters aimed at people's heads, rubber bullets aimed at their heads. And my understanding is that the parks there have been public, which is part of the statement that I think many of the occupiers are quite willing to make is, what is the constitutionality of a curfew in a public place that doesn't have the input of the public on its placement? And one of the problems is with police actions has been there's almost no threshold in saying something's a public safety risk, something's disorderly conduct. If a police doesn't want you on a sidewalk, they'll arrest you for disorderly conduct. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is be there. And there are some serious constitutional issues that are brought up that are staring people right in the face, that are not the constitutional and human rights issues of this, of being able to occupy a space that you as a taxpayer pay for, stand on a sidewalk that you pay for, stand on a park property that you pay for, so that you can assemble and discuss things that need to be discussed. It's not for anyone to say when you're done discussing these things. And that's why there may be time limits, but there also has to be reason to discuss and affect the change that people need to be doing. So the constitutional and human rights issues, even UN-sanctioned human rights, are being so egregiously and violently violated, and most of the time, the television media does not show it.
Like 12:30 or 1 because I live in Brooklyn, and I started getting calls from friends that are down here. I've been coming down to try and help. They were about to raid the park, and from my perspective, I came up on the Fulton exit over there about 12:30, 1 o'clock, something like that. First thing I saw were some young girls, probably like 18 to 20, recovering from being pepper sprayed, doing the eyes dousing. The second thing I saw was a phalanx of NYPD with riot gear. Some of them had shields and batons. They were putting a 2-block perimeter around the entire park. And I saw a number of people getting beaten while that was going on. A number of people getting pushed, as they like to say, but it's really like getting hit in the stomach or the guts. After that, like, people tried to get back in from various different ways to see what was going on in the park. I was not here for that, so I can't be like a primary source. But from what I hear, I saw sanitation show up, I saw paddy wagons show up, I saw full sanitation trucks leave, and I saw full paddy wagons leave. So there was like obviously hundreds of arrests. That's what I saw from my perspective. After that happened, everyone that I was with regrouped at Foley Square, where we started trying to make contact with various unions and our organizational media department and stuff like that, trying to figure out who was in jail, who wasn't. From there, we found word that we'd been offered an alternate space further up the street on 6th Avenue and Canal. About 8 o'clock, 8:30, we marched up there, met some union members that we could muster, and a last minute. Then we heard there was an injunction from the New York Supreme Court allowing us to be in the park until 11:30. And at 11:30, that was going to be disputed, and we would have a result sometime this afternoon. So we were led to believe when we came back down here that it was legal for us to occupy Zuccotti Park. But when we got here, we were denied entry. So now we're just waiting to see what the dispute over the legality of the occupation of the park leads to. And hopefully we can get back in tonight. I think that's the latest, but I've been up all night and my phone's dead. I was just telling these guys I don't have the most contemporary information about what's going on. I don't understand why I saw you beating a 16-year-old girl last night. I shit you not. I saw 5 of your fucking police officers beating a 16-year-old girl. And I challenge you to tell me how that's a defensible action for your city to take.
I was at home in Brooklyn. It was about 1:25 when I saw the live stream, and I saw cops in riot gear starting to circle around and surround this whole area, and I said, fuck, I gotta get down there. So I hopped on the next train. There were like 10 people on the platform waiting to go there with me. We gathered up about 20 by the time we got off at City Hall, and we got to about 4 blocks down this way because there was a line of cops in riot gear with shields blocking us off. And we were just asking them, why can't we go? And no answers, just you can't, because we were taking orders, you know. What I heard, though, about this place, mainstream media coverage was shut off by the helicopters that were up there. They shined a huge bright light in the middle, and the cops surrounded the area and started pushing people out, throwing all the books from the library into the sanitation trucks, and just cleared everything out. Many people were arrested, brutalized. Dogs and human beings were pepper sprayed for simply occupying a park very peacefully at a 2 a.m. random ass raid. Actually, it's not a random ass raid. It is a collaboration by the police force nationally. They're trying to take down these occupied cities one at a time, but it's not gonna happen because we are here and we are going back in there. That's what's gonna happen. We're here to stay! And we were not able to come in here, so hundreds of us started marching all the way across the city. We were trying to find a park to occupy, some other space to go to, so the brothers and sisters that got fucking evicted here could meet us, and we can somehow come up with a plan to either take back the park or start occupying Central Park, Foley Square. We weren't sure yet. It was a huge mess. Cops were everywhere. We were outnumbered completely. They were all in riot gear. I am on a fucking cane and I can barely walk because I have fractures on my foot. Once you're on the street, they start shoving the shit out of you. It is fucked up what they do. Yeah, and they do not care. They just come running at you. You can't be on the street, and it's police brutality, man. This is unreasonable, unjustified police brutality, and that's what I saw last night. My friend got pepper sprayed in the mouth because she was standing on the sidewalk that they were blocking off, and she was tweeting about what was happening. Just got pepper sprayed in the mouth. That is fucked up. That's fucked up. The tents, I just heard they were getting torn down.
Oh, they're gone.
They took everything we had. Those are our rightful properties. We have ownership to them. That is a communal ownership. And they tore it all down. They just kicked us out and tore it down.
So personal property was seized?
Yeah, well, it's not really personal property. Everything that was in here was all of our property, you know? It's the 99%, it's a communal thing. They're all donations that are things that people have brought in to help other people and support each other. And they just came in and raided it and took it all away. Took it all away. Completely unwarranted.
Why do they spend their
eviction? I wasn't here for the very beginning of it. I live in Jersey City. I found out about it through Facebook. Somebody posted a link to the live stream, and once I had seen what was happening around 2 o'clock, I woke up my buddy there, and we caught the next path train into the city. We got here around 3. At that point, this whole park had already been barricaded off 2 blocks in every direction, and they were corralling people and basically letting people go in one direction but not the other direction, blocking all the crosswalks, and as I said, they're corralling. So you have a big group of people, they block off the long side with a row of cops, and then they block off one side so you can't walk that way, and then they block off part of the other side so you have a bottleneck to go through to get the other way. It's corralling. That's what it is. It's a psychological warfare technique, is what it is. What happened to the property was that they took everything. And what they said to people when they were pushing everybody out of the park was that, oh, you'll be able to get your property back if you go to the storage unit in Brooklyn or whatever. What actually happened was that they piled everything up in these disorganized piles, and they carted it off in a long string of garbage trucks. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. There was a garbage truck where you could see, now it was at night, it was dark out, there was the screen of a laptop that you could see was still on, that was in the garbage truck. Okay, so that was a direct contradiction of what they told people was gonna happen within a half an hour to an hour of when they said that.
And now we see another contradiction where all of these cops in this place are directly violating the court order, or at least from 8 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., the court order was that they could not prevent us from re-entering the park. So that's pretty much it. Rally?
Were you guys down here when they got evicted this morning?
Yeah.
This guy was.
All right, you want to talk about it? What exactly happened this morning?
This morning wasn't really the kind of the start of it. It all actually started to begin roughly around 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. More cops started showing up, either carrying or while wearing their riot gear. And then roughly around 11:30, 12 o'clock, initial panic kind of set in. People were asked to leave. Flyers were handed out saying why and how long we had to leave. And the announcements were made, and then the initial push started roughly around 1 o'clock. And then everything was going well and silent until they reached the center stronghold in the kitchen area, and that's when mace and beatings became quite commonplace.
What happened in the kitchen area?
That's where they kept the stronghold. Basically, if they wanted to stay and hold their ground, they went to the kitchen area, arm in arm, and did their best, unsuccessfully, obviously.
The word is that a bunch of people were actually beaten, and that we'll have some people.
Roughly around 150 people were arrested.
Really?
I saw a few head injuries. We had some pepper spray burns.
We're gonna have some people to treat when they get out of jail.
Yeah, we're gonna have our hand. I'm coming off of 36 hours, and my day is so not even done.
What do you do?
I'm one of the medics here.
Oh, wow.
This is our medical.
What type of supplies do you roll with?
Well, normally we would roll with a hell of a lot more than what we have, but they kind of destroyed our tent and all the medical supplies and all the medical records in it. Medical records as well.
People's personal
personal
medical records.
So as far as you know, what happened to all the records and stuff they destroyed?
We have no idea.
We have no idea. Possibly the dumpster seems to be the most likely.
Which is totally illegal.
Right. So how did you become qualified to be a medic here? What's your background? Do you have a medical background or?
I'm a dive medic and a former Marine.
Wow. And I was a medic
and a firefighter.
And a firefighter.
Yeah.
The qualifications spread the gamut. I worked as a medic up in the oil rigs in Alaska on some of the oil fields up there.
You was able to, you'd like to say to Mayor Bloomberg?
Well, Mr. Bloomberg, question is whether you've broken the law or not. But if you haven't, well, then you know what? This park will never open for the Occupy Wall Street people, but you can steal Occupy Wall Street, the structure. You can never steal Occupy Wall Street, the spirit. Thank you, sir.
I'm from Russia.
How is the international media covering what's happening at Occupy Wall Street?
Fully covering. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. It is a very good lesson for, I don't know, for left or rights, but anything what is going on in the United States and especially in New York, very interesting for all the world because it's globalization. So we are all involved in the same process.
Do you want to explain your sign?
Sure, I think it's ridiculous that they try to say that we're causing a health hazard out here when my water is dirty, my air is dirty, my food is poisoned, my cosmetics have poison in it. Why are they saying that we're a health hazard when clearly there's plenty of other things going on right now? There are people homeless in the streets. You can't kick people out of the streets when they have no place else to go. It doesn't make any sense. And what happened just now was illegal. They robbed a bunch of people in this park. People have lost their possessions. People have lost paintings that they had and pictures and writings and their clothes. Like, what's going to happen for those people now? And so it's crazy how the cops can come in here and just rob people blatantly, right in daylight for everybody to see, and they still call us the criminals. It's shocking.
Do you know what happened to the property that was taken?
As far as I know, it was put into dumpsters. I just spoke to a friend, and she said that she stood here all night and watched them put it in the back of dumpsters, and the compactor ate everything up. So I know that there was a whole library here. I have no idea where the books are. They're all in the trash now. But that's not surprising because they try to limit your education constantly, and they try to limit your means of improving yourself. So it's not surprising to me that they got rid of all the books. Like, that's probably the first thing that they took out. But I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't here. I feel kind of guilty that I was warm in a bed and that was happening to all my brothers and sisters out here. So I knew I had to come out today as soon as I heard about it.
So what do you think is the next step for the movement?
Well, I think that there's a hearing going on right now to find out if we can be back in the park and to find out if what the cops did was illegal. Even if what they did was illegal, I'm sure nothing's going to happen. But I mean, there are occupations all over the planet right now, so I'm sure we're getting a lot of support because of what happened. And either people are going to leave here and go to another occupation, or we're just going to stay here and find something else to occupy. Like I said, people who have no place to go, you can't kick them out because they're just going to find someplace else to occupy. So I think that this has only made us stronger. Like every time the cops have offended us in this way, it only makes us stronger. It only insults more people to make more come out, and support us. So I'm actually pretty hopeful at this point. I'm sorry for the people who lost all their stuff today. It's really sad.
How would you explain Bloomberg's last week you were saying the park wasn't a threat, and this week he turned around and everybody's evicted?
Yeah, they knew it was a threat since the first day it started happening. They didn't believe that we were going to stay out in the park. That's why they wanted to kick us out. He even made a funny comment like, oh, we were going to see if we could just wait out the cold weather, see if they'll go away. Like, they want us to go away. It's absolutely disgusting. Why do you want people to go away who are fighting for their rights, who are saying that what's being done is wrong? Like, I don't respect anything that he says. And obviously they know that we're a threat. Like, we were waiting for this to happen. Actually, the 2-month period is what a soldier that I know said. He said, they're only going to give you about 2 months, and then they're going to kick your asses out of there. So we knew that this was coming. We just didn't know it was going to be today. So, yeah, I don't know. They're more threatened by us than we are of them, clearly. So let's go. and we're still doing this thing in a non-violent way. So they can bring their guns, their mace, their batons, their tasers, but we've only got our hands and our signs and our voices. So thank you.
Starts with the obvious. Built on oppression, depression, submission, religion. Slaves locked up in chains. Destruction, construction. Set structure for some, but none for others. So we think much has changed? Kids in school can't learn because they look out for gangs. People wake up because we still in chains. We oppress each other with fear instead of teach each other with praise. You know what that is? New age slaves.